Hey there, welcome to the archives. I'm going to try this again. So I wanted to share that I've been reading Unapologetic, a black, queer, and feminist mandate for radical movements by Charlene Carruthers. So in here it says, this 21st century activist's guide to upending mainstream ideas about race, class, and gender carves out a path to collective liberation through the Black radical tradition, drawing on Black intellectual and grassroots organizing, including the Haitian Revolution, the U.S. Civil Rights Movement, and the LGBTQ rights and feminist movements. Unapologetic calls on all of us engaged in the social justice struggle to make the movement more Black, more radical, more queer, and more feminist. Charlene Carruthers' journey has been mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually challenging, and she candidly shares stories of her own community organizing experiences and from her own life. Blending the personal and the historical, Unapologetic is a vision for how social justice movements can become sharper and more effective through principled struggle and self-awareness, healing justice, and leadership development. The book also offers a flexible model of what deeply effective organizing can be, anchored in the Chicago model of activism, which features long-term commitment, cultural sensitivity, creative strategizing, and multiple cross-group alliances. Crucially, Unapologetic provides a clear framework for activists committed to building transformative power, encouraging young people to see themselves as visionaries and leaders. Unapologetic is nothing less than an invitation to revolutionary action. So, I wanted to share some definitions as well from here. Just before I do that, I don't know who it was. I don't remember who it was now on social media, but there was somebody basically telling people like, oh, don't read, you don't need to read, and like, I respectfully would challenge that. Why wouldn't you read? I don't understand the pushback against reading. Like, there's an anti-intellectualism thing that's happening on both sides, and like, even, so I think it was somebody in the spiritual community, right? And I don't understand what that is about. Yes, absolutely tap into your intuition. Yes, absolutely go into nature, consult, do with your elders, be in community, do divinations, do all that, but like, also read. I don't understand it. There's nothing wrong with reading. That's actually where you gain a lot more knowledge, and it doesn't mean you have to agree with everything it is that you're reading, but reading is actually very necessary, right? So if you don't have access to books because of where you are in the world, or you can't read because you're burnt out, or you don't like reading, but just say that, right? Tell people that. I don't have access to books right now. I don't have access to a library. That's why I'm not reading. But like, to tell people not to read is just so, it's very, like, knowledge is power. And so the more you know, right? The more you know, the more you actually realize you don't know. So if you're out there telling people not to read, is one thing. It's just, I don't know, why would you tell people not to read? Maybe I'm just a book lover. Maybe I'm just like a library nerd that's always loved reading. I've always loved reading since I was a little high. So to hear people telling people not to read is just weird behavior. Just say, I don't like reading and I don't read and I feel like people are reading and I feel judged but to tell people not to read is a little bit something. You don't have to read, but if you don't like reading, just say that. I don't read. Just say that, right? I don't care to read. Just say that. That's okay. Nobody's asking everybody to read. Well, I am. I'm definitely asking everybody to read. But if it's not for you, it's not for you. Just telling people not to read, especially now, right? And I just also feel like it's, maybe they're not a writer. Maybe because I'm trying to get into writing. So I take it a little bit personally, but people work really hard on their craft, on their art. So to tell people not to read is just like, I wouldn't tell somebody not to do something that's related to your business. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels a little, it rubbed me the wrong way. Read, please read all the books. Read all the books if you can right now, because that's also just as sacred as going and sitting in nature and laying in a hammock or taking a swim in the river, right? There's knowledge is power. What it is that you're reading is important, right? Don't just read everything. But I think I would encourage people to please read a book. Open up a book and read a book. Because there's a lot of these same people who will pair it, and I've been there. Remember when I was burnt out, I would do this it's very hotepi, but I would do the same thing too, right? Just like my way is the best way, now I'm going to go out, and I still do that, right? And I'm going to preach everybody to go do it my way. But like, I love reading, I would love for you to read, but if you don't want to read, that's okay. I think there's a lot of knowledge that you can learn, whether it be children's book. Just look at all the children's books I've been reading and how much knowledge I've been learning. I've been learning about trees, different types of trees, different types of flowers. Today took one out at the library that I returned on how to plant stuff. And like, obviously, again, it's way better if you're in community and somebody's teaching you this, or you can visit the rainforest and see life for yourself. But for me, the reason why I loved reading as a child is because I couldn't access a lot of these things. Reading, I can go into a completely different world without ever leaving home, right? I could escape. Not to say that you need to be escaping, but it is a form of escapism. So I want to also acknowledge that like reading and all this stuff can also be a form of escapism, and that's not great either, right? Everything within moderation. So anti-blackness, how does Charlene define anti-blackness? As a system of beliefs and practices that destroy, erode, and dictate the humanity of black people. Abolition. What is this abolition? When they say defund the police, what do they mean? When they say get rid of prisons, what do they mean? Abolition is defined by critical resistance, a long-term political vision with the goal of eliminating imprisonment, policing, and surveillance, and creating lasting alternatives to punishment and imprisonment, right? That can look like many different ways: community care, mutual aid, teaching folks first aid so they know how to help folks in the community rather than having to call 911 right away. So many different ways that abolition can look like. What does Black radical tradition mean? Charlene defines it as a collection of cultural, intellectual, and action-oriented labor aimed at disrupting social, political, economic, and cultural norms that originate in anti-colonial and anti-slavery efforts. Capitalism is a huge one. Everybody's throwing capitalism around. What does capitalism mean? Here is defined as an economic system in which the means of production, the access to goods, and the value of goods are controlled by private individuals and corporations. Racial capitalism is theorized by Cedric Robinson, who argues that this system was built and flourished through the exploitation of people through slavery, imperialism, and genocide, right? Capitalism, you could think of like the enslavement of Black Africans, for instance. Now there's sugar, now there's cotton, rice, like all of these different things because there's free labor. People were doing it for free. Now you can make so much money off. And we're still seeing that, right? Minimum wage, $30 is like a huge, people are freaking out about $30 minimum wage in New York. The idea of it is just like horrifying, right? And as a business owner, obviously that's steep, but like, at what cost? Feminism. A view of bell hooks is a movement to end sexism, sexist exploitation, and oppression. That's literally just all feminism based on bell hooks' definition. You're just ending sexism, more equality, equity at best. This includes political, social, and ideological methods and works. LGBTQ is an acronym commonly used as an umbrella term for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning or queer people and communities. I use the term interchangeably with queer throughout the book. Queer generally means outside the norm or deviant. The use of term femme throughout the book refers to gender identity that is taken up in various ways throughout the queer and trans community by people who may not identify as women and who do identify as feminine. My use of the term is in the context of campaigns, and it does not refer to femme as used by lesbian and queer women. All of these terms continue to evolve, right? Reparations is defined by the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparation in America. Reparations are political demands and projects that entail repairing, healing and restoring a people injured by government or corporations because of their group identity in violation with their fundamental human rights. In addition to being a matter of justice, it is a principle of international human rights. Transformative justice, as defined by Generation 5, is a liberatory approach to violence that seeks safety and accountability without relying on alienation, punishment, or state or systemic violence, including incarceration or policing. There's one more I missed. Black radical feminisms are rooted in lived experiences and interlocking oppressions of Black people on the basis of race, class, gender, and aim to dismantle all forms of systemic oppression. I rely heavily on radical U.S. Black feminisms throughout the text, but there are many other forms across the diaspora. So just wanted to share some of those definitions with you. Again, I just started this, so I'm looking forward to it. I might share some more, but that's pretty much all. Unapologetic, a Black, queer, and feminist mandate for radical movements. So, until next time, in solidarity.